In today's In Conversation, I have the opportunity to sit down with Shelby Austin, who is the CEO of Arteria AI. Shelby is a trailblazer, and this isn't her first company. She's an entrepreneur who is changing the AI landscape. She's also passionate about women in technology and making sure that the tech space is equitable. Hi, Shelby.
Hello.
So nice to have a chance to sit down and talk to you.
Thank you for having me.
I want to talk about a whole bunch of things because your story is amazing. You are very inspiring to me personally and to a lot of people. But I want to just start laying the groundwork here. Tell us about who you are, what you do right now. I'm going to ask you background questions, but tell us about your current company.
I am the CEO of Arteria AI. Arteria focuses on working with large financial institutions around the world on their unstructured data challenges, which basically means their documentation challenges for their core processes that banks work on, like trading or lending or asset management, et cetera.
You had a first company. This is your second company, I believe. You had stops at places in between. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I started my career as a just plain old vanilla lawyer. So I was really super gung-ho on being a lawyer at this really amazing firm, Davies, Ward, Phillips & Weinberg, and I was obsessed with being a partner there and went on and started my career and became a partner there, which was really, really cool. Great place to work, by the way. But then I looked around and was so inspired by the way things were done. It looked to me like the documentation challenges around law firms, specifically with M&A at the time, but it could have been anything, were so complicated and so manual. And because I'd had a little bit of like basement experience with software and software designing and developing, I knew enough to be dangerous where I thought, there must be a better way to organize all of this information. And so I started my first company now in like 2009, this is like 15 years ago, something like that. And sort of large scale organizing this documentation and data for law firms globally.
I'm interested in so many parts of this, but the basement software dabbling, because you're a lawyer, but to go into the space of artificial intelligence and to do, to be a deeply technical company.
Yes.
I want to understand how you got there, because I think that's the pathway that is fascinating.
Yeah, so I think initially I understood the problem space. And I think for those who aren't technical, we self-limit a lot and say, like by any reasonable technical person at this stage, if I described myself as technical, I would know, everyone would laugh.
Right.
And I'm very, very, very technical for a lawyer, and I am, actually pretty technical for a human overall.
Yeah.
But I am not technical for a technical person by any stretch of the imagination. But what happened is I really became deeply passionate about how technology could be applied in a particular space. But at the time, it was really, I thought M&A deals could be done more quickly, and more cheaply and in a much more efficient manner by using technology. And because I was technical enough, I understood that technology could be applied there.
Absolutely. So, one of the things I get asked often as the CEO of Actua is, is AI, and I interact with so many parents, is AI going to just, make my kid irrelevant in the future? Like, are they going to get a job? Are there going to be any jobs? Like, what is it? And, my standard response is like, AI is not going to replace, but your kid could be replaced by someone who understands how to apply AI. And that's,
for sure,
that's the difference. And I think, I still wonder about how you became, because it's one thing to understand that there could be a software solution. Like that's not an obvious, at that time when you first started conceiving of this, that was fairly new.
Yeah, so I think that what we had at the time was really a sense that it could be a technology-enabled service, which is really what that first company was. It was really once I sold that company, and I sold that company just about 4.5 years later, because I'd had my daughter and wanted to maybe think about a different path. And so sold that company to a large global firm, and they asked me to come and run analytics and data for them. And I sort of said, like, why would you want me to come and run a technology practice for you? That seems really irresponsible. And they sort of said, we think that half the battle is being able to look at the problem and really figure out how to apply it. To your point, it's not a skill that everyone has. I hope that that's not totally immodest, but it's not a skill everyone has. And like understanding how the future will shape is a skill they sort of thought I had. I thought that they were being a little theoretical in thinking I had that skill. But as it turned out, and this was a mentor of mine who actually brought me into AI specifically, he kept giving me more and more technical portions of the organization to run. And as they went better and better, he really sort of ignited this passion I have. And so, well, today, when we look at people's kids and try and figure out, like, what should kids do to, like, learn in the world, I'm not sure they could necessarily follow my path, but I think what is sort of pattern matching about it is, like, an ability to learn, an intense curiosity, just an ability to say, yes, sure, I'll give it a go, and take it from there.
I'm curious about how you grew up, and can you pinpoint, like, where did those skills come from? So that, like, looking at a problem or being creative or a lifelong, like, how does that, because I'm in the space of how do we cultivate these things in kids, and it's not all about putting them in front of a computer and teaching them about how AI works. It's those fundamental foundational skills that have made me successful too. What are those can you pinpoint any?
Yeah, so a few. So first of all, my grandfather was an entrepreneur. He came over to Canada after the Second World War and started off as what he would describe, and I don't know this word, but like as a bushman. So I think he was paid to effectively plant trees. And then at some stage started a junkyard and then traded that in for his first building and then traded, and there was this idea that you could come from no relevant skills and you could come from nothing and you could really just engage and live your life and be risk savvy and curious, and that you could learn as you went and really apply those skills. He was probably the most supportive when I decided to quit.
He was still around.
He was still around for my first company.
Yes.
So lucky. And I remember going to him when I, made partner and got a raise, and I was like, I'm making whatever money, and I felt so good about myself. And he said, it's not much. He said, Shelby, the only way to sort of be in this world is to try and create value and to try and learn as you go.
Obviously, you have a very diverse team, and I think that's phenomenal, especially working in the space of AI. So one of the concerns that the world has, but I have, is, have we already baked in implicit bias into AI data sets, and how do we correct for that?
Well, I think what's interesting is that we actually go way farther back than people think we might in terms of where we start recruiting and where we start educating.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, we, for example, will hire, and I think recently have hired some interns from undergraduate programs who are nowhere qualified, nowhere close to being qualified to come and sort of work full time at Arteria, but really wanting to facilitate that. I passionately volunteer time with a girls' school on the subjects of STEM, because I am, deeply of the belief that we need to start younger and younger. I think some of the studies show that it's the values we develop before grade 5 that really matter in terms of the areas we go into. And so I would say, what you guys are doing, for example, is incredibly important, because we need to go back way farther than we think we need to in order to resolve the challenge. Because by the time it gets to our hiring practices, which are very important as well, and ensuring that we're not being biased in those practices, that's one thing, but ensuring we have an appropriate pipeline is certainly another for all of those roles.
What are the skills that are the most valuable skills to have right now?
Having seen the jobs that do get disrupted versus the jobs that don't, I think if AI is a task replacer, meaning it doesn't replace an entire job. It replaces the push of a button, or it replaces the flip of a page. It replaces task by task. If you are a single task-oriented individual, or what we might call a specialist, and your specialty is easily automated, I think that's where we start to fall down. I think we need to focus on soft skills, communication, interpersonal relationships, creativity, artistry. I think we have come back to an age where humans get to be even more human and get to really focus on their most, on their most sort of beautiful core elements.
Yes. if I had to describe why you are so successful, I would say, and I think these are absolutely the top future of work skills. I would say you are like a relentless problem solver. So you both can understand the problem and then you go at fixing it, right? You know, you do that.
Relentless for sure.
Yes. But then the second piece that I'm so impressed by is your willingness to just like learn and apply. Like you don't need to be an expert to go out and try something. So I love when you give examples of like, I didn't know what I was doing. So I would like read a business book and then I'd be like, okay, here's one, like the next week I'm applying this concept with my team and then I read a new book. Like that is an amazing skill because you're taking the time to listen and learn, then you're applying it and learning. Like it's so iterative.
So I suppose, yeah, so what you're referring to, which is a funny story, is in my first company, I had no business skills and I would read a new book every week and then I would just try and apply it that week. And sometimes it would go very well and sometimes it would go very poorly. And so really I took the MBA syllabus and just like applied it in my company each week. And some weeks it was a disaster. But I suppose it's the first part of what you said that really resounds too, is like, I do take the time to listen and learn. I'm not just applying I'm not just sort of taking my axe and chopping down the tree.
Right.
I am studying all of the components and then I'm taking my best first swing. So I'm not scared of swinging, but I'm also really, really trying to listen to the experts at all stages and just like trying my heart out on the field, which I think people underestimate, right? Like I like play my whole soul out on the field and then, every day in like the most earnest way.
Yes. Okay, so I'm just going to end on what are you most excited about at work right now?
Whenever you start a company, there's always the existential crisis. You're like trying to collide atoms. You're just trying to like create a spark. What I'm most excited about is 3 years in, we have our spark. We know what we're doing. We are turning documentation into data and using it for core processes at banks. Said much better now.
Yes.
And we are able to do that and have a great customer base. We have a great team and are now able to hire the best and smartest people in the world. And so I suppose now we have the ability to go. And it's not that we haven't had huge growth and it's not that we haven't done that already, because we have, or we wouldn't be here today. It's really that what we have in front of us is even more exciting than what's behind us, because now we have the spark lit and now we can see how far we want to go. So I suppose what excites me is that while 0 to 1 is my particular, if I have any area of expertise, it's taking things from like the air and making them into like a company or a team or something, and creating something from nothing. But my joy is in this next phase of growth, when you can start to really cultivate culture and start to have the team really think about what's next in the evolution and how, and how we gather this all up and make something relevant for society. And so that's really exciting for me.
So great. It was so nice to talk to you.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you got as much inspiration out of the conversation as I did. I also hope you join us for my next discussions where I sit down with other inspiring leaders who have remarkable stories.